So this is the phase we're all wanting to get to from the liminal space, and nobody kind of tells you that once you get there, it feels quite a strange place to be. So in this video, I'm talking about the next phase, the next part of the life transition spiral, and that is integration and rebuilding. This is the part where we've come out of the liminal space, we've crossed a threshold of some sorts, and we're now in that place where we're ready to start the cycle of the new. We're ready to begin to lay the foundations in what's going to eventually be the building, the house, whatever you want to term it, of our new life. So from my own personal experience, and I will say as well when I'm recording this video that I think I am in that stage myself right now, it's an exciting place to be, but it's also a little bit strange feeling, because there is this element that I've spoke about in other videos of this moving backwards and forwards. So, some days we can feel like we are rebuilding our new lives, we're starting this new cycle, this new part of life, and we've got real forward momentum. And then the next day it can just all feel like we've kind of gone back to the start again. We've gone back into that liminal space of not knowing where we're at, what we're doing, what the right thing is. So there's a little bit of a dance there, and it's not a linear process. Well, yeah, integration and rebuilding is like a time of possibilities. We've got that almost field of possibilities to kind of choose from, where we can really start to pull in and try things on. And that's a lot of this stage when we're starting to integrate. Particularly we're sort of testing and embedding the new and trying things on. So trying on things like new identities, new beliefs, new thoughts that we're having about ourselves. Sometimes when the old cycle ends, particularly if it's like identity related, there was a lot of old beliefs and narratives that maybe we've had about ourselves that we realise, these aren't true anymore. I don't want to take these forward. I'm not carrying them with me. And then this integration stage now is where we get to maybe try on some new beliefs about ourselves. What if this is true about myself? And this is where we can find things like affirmations really helpful. So trying on new habits, new thoughts, new perspectives, practically it can look like new habits. You might try a new exercise class, for example, or just something practical that you didn't do before that you're now going to do on a regular basis to become a habit, to become part of your new life. I think it's a time where then, as we integrate these pieces of ourselves and learn to try on things and see what fits and what doesn't at this time, there's still a lot of discarding. I think when we were moving through the threshold after the liminal space, there was a certain amount of conscious discarding is needed there to say, that's from before, I'm not taking this with me into my life going forwards, but we're still carrying on that process in integration. And then from integration, we move into the rebuilding of our identity, rebuilding of boundaries and the new habits and beliefs, and just slowly starting to rebuild this sense of direction. And as we do this is where it can be such a gnarly time, because I think as humans, we naturally really want to be able to plan out the path in front of us and have a clear view of exactly where we're going. And it doesn't really work like that. And that's where you can feel, some days like you've kind of got clarity about where you're going. And then the next day it just seems hazy again. And it can be really a time to keep coming back to this thought, which we touched on actually in the threshold video, about being in the present moment and being very in touch with where we're at, what our life situation is in the now, without trying to plan too much ahead. It's important that we, in this time, keep looking for those signals, keep trying to find that direction that maybe we need to turn and face ourselves into, and then we can kind of get an idea from there of, okay, this direction feels like the right way to move forwards into. but without having to know then the entire path down in that direction. I don't know if your brain works like mine, you know, I want to know every single possible direction and every path down each direction before I choose one, but it just doesn't work like that. Or if it does, you know, you tend to just kind of jump from one path to the other, and then that slows down your overall progress. So that is definitely something to be aware of during this phase. I think as well, it's a really important part of the phase where we can really learn this recurring acts to ourselves of like self-compassion and particularly self-trust, because the self-trust is a really important one for when we are trying to orient ourselves, work out which direction we're going in, that we trust, that we have enough inner trust to say, this feels like the right direction at this time. I'm going to start taking the first couple of steps in this direction. And then ultimately, this is like a time where, you know, our own inner power is like emerging, and we're learning sort of how to handle it. We're learning how to trust it. We're learning how to connect with it, and how to handle it really within our own selves. And it's something that's really needed to deepen that relationship with, so that we can eventually move into what isn't the last phase, but is the sort of latest phase on the spiral that we talk about, which is sovereignty. But yeah, this is the part where it's become obvious to us now that, you know, maybe up to a certain point we were really focused on looking behind. We were kind of pointing ourselves in that direction of backwards, what has been, what has ended. And our energy was a lot focused into that ending. And now as we're in integration and rebuilding, we've changed direction. We're more forward focused. We're looking ahead. We're looking to what's going to happen. So in terms of a relationship transition, for example, it might be the point where you feel like you're at a place where you can start dating again, for example, or even just going out with friends and having more of a social life. In terms of like work and career, it can look like, you know, following that pull to start a business or change a career, and sort of coming up with all those different ideas of what makes work meaningful to you and what a business could look like, for example, and the first steps of setting that up. All the practical things then start to come in rebuilding, and that's where, you know, we're really sort of taking that seat as being like the architects of our own rebuilding of our own life. So a few more practical examples that are useful, I think, during this part of the life transition spiral are, you know, having things like coaching, places where you can examine your thoughts and beliefs, places where you can have accountability, you know, for rebuilding. And if you're wanting to take action on something new, that accountability from another person can be really useful in helping you take these first steps, because they are often so confusing and you can't quite see the path ahead. So it can be really useful to have that kind of support in place. You know, business support if you are going through a career or business life transition in that respect. Things, again, like practical things that where you're getting out and about again. So maybe like a community class or a fitness class where you're getting a bit more like connection with new people, or people there, maybe learning new skills as well. These are all really useful things to look at doing in this time. So ultimately, I think the phase of integration and rebuilding can be a really positive one. You know, there's so much potential there, and it can be at the same time really exciting and really overwhelming at the same time. And I think it's just important to remember that balance of where we're at right now, and that it's useful to have a direction to go in, but not that we need to have the whole path laid out yet. And again, remembering that, you know, if there is a bit of ebbing and flowing, you know, sometimes we feel like we're making a lot of progress, and some days we just feel like we're back at the beginning again. Remembering that is really part of the process, and just normalising that really. So I'd love to hear where you're at in your own journey along the spiral. You know, do you feel like you are in integration and rebuilding phase right now, and And how is that looking for you at the moment? You know, do you feel like there's anything holding you back, or are you happy with the amount of possibilities that are on offer? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to go a little bit deeper on all the different stages of the life transition spiral, I have a free workshop where we cover all the different stages, and we also take a bit of time to kind of give ourselves that orientation as well, to work out where we're at and if there's any sort of new signals emerging and what kind of first steps we can take and how best we can get those to kind of come into our consciousness and be able to move forwards. So I'll pop a link to that in the description below. Otherwise, I will see you soon for the next video.